fellow viewers, it is with profound honor and respect that I seize the CryOut TV platform to analyze the urgent situation in Cameroon. I am Theodore Ngumba, and this, in a nutshell, are my thoughts on the Anglophone crisis as an avid supporter of the cause from its very beginning. What began as a peaceful protest by Anglophone teachers and lawyers has exploded into violence bordering outright civil war in Cameroon. Political masters and civilians had always championed the country's cultural and ethnic diversity, often describing their country as an island of peace in an ocean of instability. The lawyers and teachers had decried marginalization and poor working conditions. The demonstrators denounced the government's inability to uphold the constitution by encouraging the dominance of the French language and culture. They argued that corruption and lack of political will had deprived them of the ability to enhance their heritage and carry out their tasks towards the homeland dutifully. A fervent wish to see English assume its rightful place in classrooms and courtrooms as stipulated by the Constitution has snowballed into violence. The country, which had seen its international stock rise due to its copious natural resources and football prowess, is grabbing headlines as the death toll and destruction continues to mushroom. How did an erstwhile peace-loving country descend into such disorder so abruptly? The core of the matter is the government's heavy-handed response to peaceful protesters. Soldiers and police did not hesitate to brutalize, rape, kill, and arrest scores of civilians. By using force to submit the masses instead of engaging in genuine dialogue, the government opened the floodgates of radicalization. As a consequence of the government's reckless behavior, the secessionist argument has and continues to pick up steam. Cameroonians have historically welcomed exiles from other countries with open arms. Hundreds of thousands fleeing war in Nigeria, Burundi, Rwanda, Congo, Mali, Central African Republic, Namibia, Liberia, and Chad have all sought refuge in Cameroon. But today, the trend has changed dramatically. Thousands of Southern Cameroonians find themselves as refugees in Nigeria and other countries. This as a consequence of entire villages being burnt to the ground, while arrests continue unabated and fundamental human rights continue to be violated. Rampaging soldiers can no longer guarantee the safety of the people and their property. A military that was supposed to protect the territorial integrity of its citizens is now acting like a bull in a china shop. How can the government therefore argue that it has goodwill towards Southern Cameroonians, when not a single officer or foot soldier has been sanctioned, even as the evidence of their cowardly behavior continues to mount? This off-handed response has gradually alienated most of the pacifists who initially embraced the federal stance. By insisting on maintaining the status quo, the same government is now paying a heavy price. Southern Cameroon has become an even deadlier war front than anything government troops have experienced during the Bakassi War and the fight against the nebulous Boko Haram. While opinion varies on the strategy and degree of escalation by armed insurgents, the right to self-defense is being voiced louder and louder. The government argument that it is fighting terrorism is mere hogwash. Who is the terrorist? When government troops have senselessly continued to torture, arrest, rape, and maim unarmed civilians, and boldly recording their vicious acts on cell phones for the whole world to see. It is blatant trumpery to argue that a military is professional as claimed by the authorities when its soldiers have engaged in ISIS-style head-chopping of a citizen. It is usual rhetoric. The government always argues that the footage is doctored so as to incriminate innocent soldiers. Such irresponsible abuse of power and complete disregard for the due process of the law is only reinforcing the belief that the military, under aegis of the government, has declared war on the people of Southern Cameroon. Cameroonians know and appreciate of the sacrifices of the good soldiers in their fight against Boko Haram, but are appalled by the behavior of this military that is supposed to be the cornerstone of their safety. Civilians should feel safe with the army's presence, but the army is no different than Boko Haram if civilians dread their appearance and will rather flee their villages and homeland every time soldiers appear. The grandmother who was burnt alive in Kwakwa village will still be alive if it wasn't for soldiers acting like the mafia. Extrajudicial killings are not the hallmark of a people's army, but of an army against the people. In spite of the despondent and almost hopeless circumstances of the country, there is still a glimmer of hope. Hope that the government will rejig its strategy and approach towards the Anglophone problem by engaging in genuine and constructive dialogue with everyone concerned. The government must take upon itself to immediately halt the excesses of its soldiers and administrators. Otherwise, the government's grip on the situation will continue to err. There is hope that Cameroonians in general and Southern Cameroonians in particular will use the same enthusiasm they have portrayed to approach upcoming elections. The present government has woefully failed in problem solving and has compelled the electorate to seek change. Change that can be achieved through the ballot box as is expected of a true democracy. A single unified candidacy is probably the best strategy to win the elections. Otherwise, a fractured opposition to the ruling party and its allies may be costly to the people's true desire to effect change. The onus is not only on the people to massively vote out a president who has usurped power for 35 years, but also on the international community to guarantee free and fair elections. Electoral fraud has been the bread and butter of the Biya era. Hope that secessionists and supporters of Julius Ayuk-Tabe can realize that a new government will be more willing to consider reconciliation and amnesty. Hope that secessionists will acknowledge that such an undertaking is no cakewalk. Some of the secessionists actually reside in countries where such endeavors were handily defeated politically and militarily. Case in point being the United States, which is viewed as being the pinnacle of democracy. Even after a bloody civil war, the Union was kept intact. Also bearing in mind that secession is not guaranteed to bring peace and development, as is the case with South Sudan, where civil war first broke out in Sudan in 1962. It was not until 2011 that South Sudan finally broke away with millions of lives lost and a war in progress. The plight of the South Sudanese people is probably not going to end anytime soon. Cameroon is not the United States or Sudan, but the facts speak for themselves. Hopefully, Cameroonians will realize the power of their contributions, both individual and collective. Ultimately, the country is theirs and not the personal property of some octogenarian and his bandwagon of hand-clapping stooges. The country is ripe for change. Change from the old guard, not destructive change where the country will be relegated to the Stone Age change that will guarantee freedom of speech and a level playing field for the all and sundry. Change that will make the military protectors instead of oppressors. More importantly, change that would uphold the tenets of the Constitution. Cameroonians cannot, however, wait forever. The clock is ticking and the powder keg is being primed slowly but surely. Winning will be achieved with good judgment and bearing propaganda. Fellow viewers, thank you for your kind attention and support. And stay tuned to Crowd TV, which is determined to be the true source of reliable information. Download the Crowd TV app, follow, share, and like us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you.